We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. In the heavy silence of a rainy night, Ethan Cole stood motionless by the window, staring out into the streetlights blurring behind the downpour. His gut churned. He had felt something shifting for months. Whispers in the shadows of their marriage. Cool glances that once would have been warm. But tonight, the truth would claw its way into the open. He knew it. Behind him, Lauren, the woman he had built a life with for 13 years, paced the living room, her arms folded tightly across her chest, her nails biting into her own skin. She hadn't even bothered to make dinner. Not that Ethan cared anymore. His appetite had vanished long ago, replaced by a knot of suspicion and dread. "I need to talk to you," she said finally, her voice a fragile tremor slicing through the room. He turned slowly, bracing himself. "Go ahead," he said. His voice sounded alien even to his own ears, cold, detached, exhausted. Lauren hesitated. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous tick he hadn't seen in years, and for a fleeting second, he thought he saw regret flicker in her eyes. But it was too little, too late. "I've been thinking," she began, her words clipped, rehearsed. "Our marriage, it's good, but it's stagnant. And she faltered, then swallowed. "I think we should consider an open arrangement." The words hit Ethan like a gunshot to the chest. He stared at her, feeling as if the air had been sucked out of the room. He almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Open arrangement? After everything they had built? After every sacrifice he'd made to keep their life afloat, while she pursued her dream of opening her boutique? But Lauren wasn't joking. I need to experience more. I need to feel alive again," she said, her voice thick with manufactured emotion. "I don't want to lose us. I just want freedom." Freedom. A word she now wielded like a dagger. Ethan said nothing. He simply watched her, watched the woman he had loved reduce their marriage to a convenience, an outdated contract to be amended for her entertainment. "Are you already seeing someone?" he asked finally, his voice low. Lauren flinched. She shook her head too quickly. "No," she said. "No, Ethan. This isn't about someone. It's about me." But Ethan had spent years learning the subtle language of lies, and in her quick denial, he heard all the truth he needed. Someone was already in the picture. She just hadn't worked up the courage to admit it yet. And in that moment, something inside him broke. Not like glass, not like something shattering. It broke like an old tree, quietly, invisibly, a slow and irreversible death. He nodded once. "Fine," he said, his voice flat. "If that's what you want." Lauren blinked, surprised. She had expected a fight. She had wanted a fight, he realized bitterly, because a fight would have absolved her. If he had screamed, raged, begged, she could have painted herself as the victim trapped by a suffocating man. Instead, Ethan gave her nothing. He turned, picked up his car keys from the counter, and walked out into the storm. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he couldn't stay under the same roof a second longer. In the weeks that followed, Ethan moved into a short-term apartment, a cold, impersonal space that matched the numbness he carried inside. Days bled into each other. Work, gym, sleepless nights repeat. He found himself remembering the small things. How he used to leave notes for Lauren in her lunchbox. How he'd sit through endless episodes of her favorite shows just to see her smile. How he once believed that love was a foundation you could build a life upon. And all the while, Lauren thrived. Social media posts of girls' nights out, new clothes, late-night stories that didn't quite add up. She didn't miss him. She missed his support, his stability, his wallet. One night, Ethan sat alone with a bottle of bourbon, scrolling through photos from their early days together. They had been happy, hadn't they? Or had he simply been too blind, too desperate to believe in a fantasy that was crumbling from the start? Was it all a lie? Somewhere deep in his gut, he realized maybe she had never truly loved him the way he loved her. Maybe she had just loved what he could give. The bitterness grew like a wildfire. But Ethan was not a man who would go quietly into despair. If she wanted freedom, he would give it to her, but on his terms, and with a price she would never forget. As Lauren flaunted her new, liberated self, Ethan began crafting a plan. A slow, deliberate, merciless plan. Not the childish kind of revenge that involved shouting matches or drunken texts. No, Ethan would rise. He would build a life so powerful, so untouchable, that Lauren would realize, too late, what she had thrown away. But he needed to play smart. Patience was the weapon. Success was the knife. He started by transforming himself. A new personal trainer, brutal workouts, updated wardrobe, sharply tailored suits instead of the tired old casuals Lauren had once picked out for him. Networking aggressively at work, attending events, shaking hands, forging alliances, building an image of a man who was unstoppable. And slowly, he made it clear, subtly, that he was moving on. Without rage, without public scenes, with quiet, deadly elegance. And Lauren noticed. Oh, she noticed. First, it was in the small things. Nervous texts asking how he was. Then invitations, dinner, as friends. Ethan responded politely but coolly. He wanted her to stew, to suffer in her growing irrelevance. And while he was outwardly composed, inside he was forging steel, preparing for a final act of betrayal so cutting that she would never recover. The next time Lauren called him, it was just past midnight. Ethan stared at his phone, vibrating across the table, her name flashing on the screen like an accusation. He let it ring out. No message followed, just silence. He poured himself another glass of whiskey, savoring the bitter burn in his throat. She was beginning to feel the isolation, the slow creeping fear that maybe, just maybe, she had overestimated her own appeal. That maybe the men she was running to were only chasing a thrill, not offering a future. Ethan wasn't naive enough to think he was blameless. He had allowed her to take, and take until there was nothing left of him. But no more. The life he was building now was without her fingerprints on it. A new promotion was already within reach, something he'd been too distracted to pursue while holding their marriage together with trembling hands. And as he stood before the mirror each morning now, adjusting his tie, he saw a man returning who had been lost for years. A man who remembered his own worth. At a charity gala one crisp Saturday evening, everything changed. Ethan wasn't looking for a confrontation. He hadn't even known Lauren would be there. He was there on the arm of a stunning woman named Harper, confident, witty, the kind of woman who radiated effortless charm without trying to dim anyone else's light. Lauren saw them almost immediately. Her face, made up to perfection, blanched when her eyes landed on Ethan. She was alone. She tried to act casual as she approached. Ethan could see her squaring her shoulders, pasting on that brittle smile she used when she wanted to pretend nothing ever touched her. Harper excused herself gracefully, sensing the tension without needing an explanation. Lauren took a deep breath. "You look good," she said, her voice a little too high-pitched to be natural. "You too," Ethan replied, although it wasn't true. Lauren looked exhausted beneath the makeup, her sparkle dimmed, her movements edged with a desperate kind of energy. "I didn't know you were seeing someone," she ventured, flicking a glance toward Harper, who was now chatting animatedly with a small circle of admirers. "I'm not," Ethan said smoothly. "We're just friends." The unspoken truth hung in the air between them. Even if that was the case now, it wouldn't be for long. Harper was different. She wasn't an escape. She was a choice. A future. Lauren licked her lips, hesitating. "Ethan, I miss us." He gave her a slow, measured look. "You miss the version of me that revolved around you," he said quietly. "That's gone." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. He smiled slightly, a smile without warmth. "Enjoy the evening, Lauren." And with that, he walked away, leaving her standing alone under the glittering chandeliers, surrounded by people she could no longer manipulate with a flutter of her lashes or a flash of a smile. That night, Harper leaned into him in the back of the car, laughter bubbling out of her. "I don't know what history you have with her," she said, "but whatever it is, you won." Ethan didn't respond immediately. He simply stared out at the city lights flashing past, feeling the truth of her words settle into his bones. He had won, but the war wasn't over yet. Lauren wasn't the type to surrender gracefully. She started reaching out more insistently after that night. Innocuous texts at first, reminders about forgotten possessions, questions about mutual friends, but quickly escalating into confessions, apologies, pleas. Ethan ignored them all. Every unanswered message, another brick in the wall he was building between them. Meanwhile, his life expanded. Promotions turned into partnership offers. Networking acquaintances turned into real friendships. Harper became a constant presence, not clinging, not demanding, but simply there, challenging him, making him laugh again. With her, he rediscovered parts of himself he thought had died. But even as he moved forward, Ethan understood that a final reckoning with Lauren was inevitable. She wouldn't let go until he made it clear, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that the chapter was closed forever. The opportunity came sooner than he expected. One evening, as he left a downtown event, he found Lauren waiting by his car. The rain had started again, soaking her thin jacket, making her hair cling to her cheeks. She looked small, vulnerable, utterly unlike the confident woman who had once demanded an open marriage, as if it were a new accessory she wanted to try on. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling, "please, just 5 minutes." He sighed inwardly, but said nothing, unlocking the car and getting inside. She hurried to the passenger side and slid in before he could change his mind. They sat in silence for a moment, the rain drumming against the roof. "I made a mistake," she said finally. I thought if we opened things up, it would fix what was broken. I thought you'd realize how much you love me." He stared straight ahead, hands gripping the steering wheel. "I didn't realize I was pushing you away," she continued, her voice cracking, "until you were gone." Still he said nothing. "I want to fix it," she whispered. "I want to come home." At last, Ethan turned to look at her. Really look. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged, shoulders hunched defensively. She was a shadow of the woman who had once turned every head in a room. "You burned that bridge," he said, his voice low but steady. "And even if you hadn't, I don't think I want to go back to being the man who waited at home for you to remember he existed." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but Ethan felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just a deep, aching emptiness where his love for her used to live. "You chose your freedom," he said, "and now you have it." He pulled out his phone and opened a message he had drafted for weeks, a formal notification that he was filing for divorce. Without hesitation, he hit send. Lauren's phone vibrated almost immediately. She flinched as she read the screen, the finality of it sinking in. "I'm sorry," she sobbed, clutching her phone to her chest. "I know," Ethan said quietly. He opened the car door, stepped out into the rain, and walked away without looking back. The night swallowed him up, and somewhere deep in his chest, a small, steady flame flickered to life. Not of revenge, not of hatred, but of freedom, real freedom, for the first time in years. Weeks slipped by in a haze of paperwork, meetings with attorneys, and carefully measured silences. Ethan didn't bother announcing the divorce to anyone beyond the necessary channels. He wasn't interested in public sympathy or whisper gossip. Let Lauren do that if she wanted. She had always needed an audience. He, on the other hand, was building something greater in the shadows, something she would only hear about when it was too late to matter. In private, he watched her spiral. Mutual friends, the few who still felt comfortable talking to him, would occasionally slip bits of information into conversation. Lauren had tried rebounding with a few casual flings, men younger, flashier, but none of them stuck. One by one, they saw the cracks she couldn't hide for long, the insecurity, the desperation, the constant need to be validated. Eventually, even the most patient ones disappeared, leaving her more alone than before. Meanwhile, Ethan moved forward with brutal efficiency. His evenings were no longer wasted waiting for a text or wondering whose bed Lauren was occupying. They were filled with work, not just his 9-to-5 but passion projects he had neglected for years. Photography, travel planning, business networking events that turned into real opportunities. Harper was often at his side, though theirs remained a careful friendship for now. She never asked for more, never demanded explanations, and that was part of why Ethan trusted her. She existed in his orbit not as a weight, but as a steady, warm presence he could choose when he was ready. Every now and then, Lauren still tried. Small, pitiful attempts to latch onto fragments of the past. A forgotten sweatshirt left behind at his apartment. Hey, do you remember that song we used to dance to? Message at 2 a.m. Ethan never answered. His silence was its own language now, one Lauren was finally starting to understand. One night, a letter arrived at his apartment. A real, handwritten letter in Lauren's familiar slanted script. He almost threw it away unopened, but something made him pause. Inside, she poured out pages of regret, apologies, memories twisted and reinterpreted as if sheer word count could erase the damage done. I miss waking up next to you. I miss feeling safe. I miss your laugh. I didn't realize what I had until it was too late. She begged for another chance. Promised she had changed. Swore she was willing to do anything to make it right. Ethan sat for a long time staring at those words, feeling nothing but a cool, detached pity. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't even anger. It was simply the realization that he had outgrown her, that he had wasted enough of his life on a woman who only loved him when it was convenient. He didn't respond. Instead, he spent the next few weeks finalizing the divorce. His lawyer was ruthless but fair, ensuring Ethan retained everything he deserved and then some. Lauren, predictably, contested every point, from furniture she hadn't touched in years to a vacation fund Ethan had solely paid into. But the facts were on Ethan's side, and Lauren's tantrums only made her look weaker in court. The final hearing was quick and clinical. Ethan watched Lauren from across the courtroom, saw her crumbling facade, the way she clutched tissues and shaking hands. Her attorney kept glancing at her with thinly veiled frustration. No judge in their right mind would side with her now. When the gavel came down, granting Ethan full ownership of the home, car, and major assets, he felt no triumph, just relief. Later, outside the courthouse, Lauren approached him one last time. Her heels clicked desperately against the pavement as she caught up to him. "Ethan," she gasped out of breath. Please, just tell me if there's anything I could do to fix this." He turned to her, calm and unflinching. For a long moment, he simply studied her. The tear-streaked makeup, the trembling hands, the way she couldn't meet his gaze without crumbling. "You already did enough," he said quietly. She flinched as if he had struck her. He turned away, walking toward the parking lot where Harper was waiting by his car, waving casually when she saw him. Ethan didn't have to look back to know Lauren was still standing there, rooted to the spot, realizing too late that he was gone for good. As he slid into the car beside Harper, she gave him a knowing smile. No judgment, no questions, just presence. "You okay?" she asked simply. He nodded, the weight of years lifting from his shoulders. "Yeah," he said, for the first time in a long time. The months that followed were a revelation. Ethan traveled for the first time in years, solo trips to places he had always dreamed of visiting. Greece, Japan, Patagonia, each destination peeling back another layer of the man he had forgotten he was. He documented his travels through photography, something he had loved and abandoned in the chaos of his marriage. His pictures gained attention online, leading to gallery invitations and a new circle of creative, inspiring people who didn't know him as Lauren's husband. They knew him as Ethan Cole, photographer, adventurer, survivor. Every now and then, mutual acquaintances would still offer news of Lauren, little scraps he neither asked for nor needed. She was struggling. Her boutique had closed after months of dwindling sales. She was living with a friend, barely scraping by. The men she had once drawn so easily now looked past her, seeking younger, shinier distractions. Ethan didn't gloat. He simply moved on. He dated casually, but guardedly, unwilling to rush back into anything resembling the entanglement he had escaped. He took long hikes through mountain trails alone. He learned to surf. He hosted dinner parties with people who made him laugh until his sides hurt. He built a life rich with meaning. Not because he needed to prove anything to Lauren, but because he had finally remembered how to live for himself. The revenge, if you could call it that, wasn't dramatic or cruel. It was simple. It was elegant. It was living a better life without her in it. It was thriving in ways she would never again be allowed to witness. It was waking up each morning without the heavy, sinking feeling that he wasn't enough. One evening, months later, Ethan stood on a balcony overlooking a city he had never visited before. The air was warm, scented with salt and flowers. Behind him, inside the hotel suite, Harper laughed with some of their new friends, her voice light and free. He smiled to himself, taking a deep breath. This was what survival looked like. This was what rebuilding from the ruins felt like. And somewhere out there, Lauren was probably still searching for the version of herself she had so carelessly lost, not realizing the only person she had ever betrayed was herself. Ethan didn't hate her. He simply didn't care anymore. And that, in the end, was the sharpest revenge of all. Ethan didn't look back. Days turned into weeks, and he rarely thought about Lauren anymore. Work filled his days. New friendships filled his nights. It wasn't that he forced her out of his mind. She had simply faded into the background like a song you realize you no longer hum. One afternoon, while grabbing coffee at his favorite cafe, he spotted her across the street. She was thinner, her hair tied up in a messy bun, talking animatedly to a man Ethan didn't recognize. Even from a distance, he could see the desperation in her movements, the way she laughed too loudly, leaned in too close. It wasn't confidence. It was survival. He turned away before she saw him. Back at the office, Harper poked her head into his doorway, holding up a bottle of wine. "Celebration tonight?" she asked. "Promotion's official." He smiled, standing. "Absolutely." That evening, surrounded by people who genuinely admired him for who he was, Ethan realized how much his life had changed. Not by accident, by choice. Lauren texted again the next day. A simple, desperate line. "I miss you. I made a mistake." He didn't reply. He didn't even hesitate anymore. Another week passed. Then another. Then came the letter. A thick, crumpled envelope shoved under his apartment door. Inside, a handwritten mess of regrets. Apologies for everything. Please for another chance. Promises to be different. To be better. To love him properly this time. He didn't finish reading it. He slid the letter back into the envelope and tossed it into the trash without a word. That night, over dinner with Harper and a few close friends, Ethan laughed harder than he had in years. Real, belly-aching laughter. He caught Harper watching him across the table, her eyes soft, her smile easy. No expectations. No demands. Later, walking her to her car, Harper paused, her breath misting in the cool night air. "You're different lately," she said. He tilted his head. "Different how?" "Lighter," she said. "Freer. Like you're finally breathing." He didn't answer right away. Just smiled, feeling it deep in his bones. "I guess I am," he said quietly. She squeezed his hand, a simple gesture full of warmth. Then she kissed his cheek, soft, lingering, and got in her car, leaving him standing there under the streetlights, heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with pain. For the first time in years, Ethan realized he wasn't rebuilding his old life. He was creating a new one Lauren would never be part of, and he was finally okay with that. The final papers came through on a Monday morning, tucked into a plain envelope. No drama, no grand announcements. Ethan signed them without blinking, feeling nothing but quiet relief. It was done. Official. Final. There were no more what-ifs left to haunt him. Later that evening, he found himself standing on the balcony of his apartment. The city sprawled out before him. Lights blinked in the distance. Somewhere, people were falling in love, making promises they might or might not keep. Life kept moving. So would he. Lauren didn't reach out again. Maybe she finally understood there was nothing left to salvage. Maybe she realized some mistakes don't come with second chances. One evening, as he was closing his laptop after a long day, his phone buzzed. It was Harper. She wasn't asking for anything. Just a simple message. "Drinks to celebrate your freedom?" He smiled at the screen for a moment before typing back. Wouldn't miss it. At the bar, Harper was already waiting, dressed simply but effortlessly beautiful. She lifted her glass when he approached. "To second chances," she said with a wink. Ethan clinked his glass against hers, feeling the final remnants of the past slip away. The pain, the regret, the anger, all replaced by something cleaner. Hope, excitement, freedom. Harper leaned in close, her voice low. "You know, you never really told me what happened." He considered it for a moment, then shrugged. Someone mistook comfort for love, and when they got bored, they looked for excitement elsewhere. She nodded, understanding more than he said. "Their loss," she said simply. He laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. Exactly. They talked for hours. About everything. About nothing. And for the first time, Ethan didn't feel like he was fighting for someone's attention, approval, or love. He was just being himself, and it was enough. When he finally walked her to her car, Harper hesitated before opening the door. She turned, studying him in the soft glow of the streetlights. "You're ready, you know," she said. "For what?" he asked, though he already knew. She smiled. for whatever comes next. Ethan reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't pull away, and in that moment, he realized how far he had come. Not just from Lauren, but from the broken man he had once been, begging for scraps of affection. He wasn't that man anymore. He was stronger now, wiser, whole, and whatever the future held, he was ready to face it head on. As Harper leaned in, her lips brushing his, Ethan closed his eyes and let himself fall. Not into old patterns, not into fear, but into something new, something real, something he had fought like hell to earn. And as they stood there, wrapped up in a kiss that tasted like hope, Ethan knew one thing for certain. The best revenge was never rage. It was happiness. And he had it now. Finally. For good.